I thought my husband was just on a business trip in Vegas until I saw wedding photos of him with another woman, plastered all over social media. When I confronted him, he laughed it off as a joke. But the marriage was real, legal, binding, and behind my back. That's when I knew I had to fight back, not just for me, but to expose the truth to the world. Family story, my husband. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the photo on my phone, my husband smiling, standing next to a woman in a short white dress. They looked like a couple out of a cheap Vegas chapel advertisement. My heart pounded in my chest as I zoomed in. There was no mistaking it. That was him, in the same suit he wore to our anniversary dinner last year. The next morning, I waited until he got home from his business trip. He kissed me like nothing happened, like our lives hadn't just exploded into 1,000 sharp pieces. I let him settle in, even handed him a cup of coffee, then asked as casually as I could, "So, how was Vegas?" He barely looked up from his phone. Busy. Meetings all day. That was lie number one. I took a deep breath and placed my phone on the table in front of him. The wedding photo filled the screen. "Looks like you had time for other activities." He blinked. For a split second, he froze, but then laughed. "Oh my God, that babe! It was just a joke. A drunken dare. One of those silly fake weddings for tourists. It didn't mean anything." Lie number 2. Something in me cracked. Maybe it was the casual way he said babe, like I was too stupid to notice how far he'd gone. Or maybe it was the way he acted, like marrying another woman, even as a joke, was no big deal. I didn't say anything. I just nodded slowly and excused myself to the bedroom, locking the door behind me. Then I started digging. Over the next few days, I did what any betrayed wife with a decent Wi-Fi connection would do. I investigated. I found the name of the chapel, called them. At first, they refused to give me information, but when I pretended to be the bride and said I'd lost the paperwork, they emailed a copy of the marriage certificate. His signature was right there. So was hers. The date. 2 nights ago. Witnesses. 2 strangers, probably paid by the venue. Legal status 100% binding in the state of Nevada. This wasn't a joke. This was bigamy. I sat there staring at the document, hands shaking. He had married someone else while still married to me. No talk of divorce. No separation. No warning. Just another life. And the worst part, the woman in the photo didn't look shocked or drunk. She looked happy, like she knew what she was doing, like they were in love. That night, I didn't confront him again. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Instead, I met with a lawyer. I wanted to understand my rights. Could I sue him? Could I press charges? What would happen to our shared assets? Our house, my retirement fund, the business we built together. The lawyer looked at the marriage certificate, then back at me. "This is serious," she said. "Bigamy is a felony in many states, including Nevada and yours. We can file for divorce with cause. And depending on the circumstances, we might be able to press criminal charges. For the first time since I saw that photo, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt power, but I didn't stop there. While my attorney filed the paperwork, I reached out to a friend of mine who worked for a local lifestyle blog. I told her everything anonymously at first. Then after she verified the documents, she asked if I'd be willing to tell my story publicly. Part of me hesitated. I'm not someone who seeks attention. But the other part of me, the one that felt humiliated, betrayed, and used, wanted the world to know what kind of man my husband really was. So I said yes. The article went viral in less than 48 hours. The headline, "Wife Discovers Husband Secretly Married Another Woman in Vegas While on Business Trip, and the Marriage is Legal." It exploded on social media. People were outraged. Some shared their own stories of betrayal. Others asked who the mystery woman was. Some even recognized her from her own Instagram, which had since gone private. Turns out she had posted the wedding photo first. Meanwhile, my husband, he came home looking pale. You went to the press?" he asked, his voice shaking. I didn't answer. I just handed him the divorce papers. "You'll want to sign those. Quickly, before the DA decides to charge you." His eyes widened. "You wouldn't." "I already did," I said. "You married another woman while still married to me. That's not just betrayal. It's a crime." He stormed out of the house that night. I haven't seen him since, but that's okay. I'm not waiting for an apology. I'm not holding my breath for closure, because now this story isn't just mine. It's a warning to every woman who's been lied to, gaslighted, or discarded like she didn't matter. And I'm not done yet. Family story, my husband. The article didn't just go viral. It blew up my life in the best and worst ways possible. I woke up 2 days after it published to a phone full of notifications. Messages from friends, coworkers, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were supportive, others shocked. A few were even angry I hadn't told them privately. But the loudest responses came from strangers, people who saw a version of themselves in my story. Women, mostly women. They sent me messages like, "Thank you for speaking out," or "I thought I was alone." But then something unexpected happened. She reached out. The other woman. The one in the wedding photo. The one who stood next to my husband at a Vegas altar and smiled like she'd just won the lottery. She messaged me. I stared at the notification for a long time before opening it. Her profile was private now. No posts visible, no photos. Just her name and a short bio that read, "Not here for drama." Irony much. Her message was short. "I think we need to talk." I didn't know everything. I deserved to explain. At first I wanted to delete it. Why would I want to hear her side? She was part of the betrayal. She wore the dress. She kissed my husband. She stood in my place. But then curiosity crept in. What did she mean by "didn't know everything"? What had he told her? Did she really think he was single? So, I replied with one word, "Coffee." We met at a small cafe near my office. I wore my most put-together outfit. Black blazer, red lipstick, no visible cracks in my armor. She looked nervous. Younger than I expected. Maybe late 20s, if that. She was pretty in an Instagram influencer kind of way. Perfectly contoured face. Long lashes. She fidgeted with her straw as I sat down. She spoke first. I didn't know he was married. I swear. He told me he was divorced. I studied her. "And you believed him?" He looked down. I did, at first. He said the divorce was finalized, but they hadn't done the paperwork yet. Said it was complicated because of a house and some business stuff. I gave a cold laugh. Wow, so original. That man couldn't finalize paperwork to save his life. She blinked. I found out 2 days before the wedding. I saw a photo on his phone. You. On a beach. It was clearly recent. And you still married him? She didn't answer at first. Then I asked him about it. He said you were crazy. That you were stalking him. That you couldn't let go. My stomach twisted. That was his narrative. I was the unstable one. The bitter ex-wife who couldn't accept reality. I leaned in. And you believed that too. Her eyes welled up. I don't know. I wanted to. I didn't want to call off the wedding. I thought maybe if I loved him enough, he'd forget about the past. The past. I echoed anger rising in my throat. Sweetheart, I wasn't the past. I was the wife. The legal one. The one paying the mortgage and folding his socks while you played dress-up in Vegas. She flinched, but didn't deny it. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. I didn't forgive her, not in that moment, but I saw something else in her eyes. Shame, embarrassment, a hint of betrayal herself. Turns out I wasn't the only one he'd lied to. That night I went home and poured myself a glass of wine, not to numb the pain, but to toast to the new me, the woman who finally saw through the lies and stopped apologizing for being angry. I had spent too many years making excuses for him, for his late nights, his disappearing acts, the text messages from unknown numbers, the sudden work trips, and the worst part I thought being a good wife meant keeping quiet, keeping the peace. But now peace was the last thing on my mind. The fallout came fast. His company put him on leave, pending investigation after the article circulated internally. Turns out, marrying another woman while still married to your co-founder, me, wasn't great for business. Shocking, right? Mutual friends took sides, some blaming me for airing our dirty laundry. But I didn't care. I wasn't trying to be polite anymore. I was trying to survive. My lawyer kept me updated daily. The divorce was moving forward. We had enough evidence to request a favorable settlement and potentially open a criminal case. The bigamy charge was tricky, since he claimed the Vegas marriage was a mistake and had filed for annulment. But we had the timing, the emails, the lies, the intent. Intent matters, and I had all the receipts. Meanwhile, he tried to call me, text me, even left a letter on my windshield once begging me to stop. Let's work this out privately, he wrote. Think of our reputation. Funny how that only mattered after he got caught. I didn't respond, but I kept documenting everything. Every call, every message, every piece of evidence. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every woman who had ever been gaslighted into silence. Every wife told she was overreacting. Every partner made to feel small, while someone else played house behind her back. And somewhere along the way, the heartbreak turned into clarity. I started seeing a therapist. I reconnected with old friends. I picked up painting again, something I hadn't done since college. For the first time in years, I began to feel like me. Not someone's waif. Not someone's doormat. Just me. People ask if I regret going public. If I regret airing the scandal. I don't. Because if my story stopped even one woman from marrying a liar, it was worth it. If it gave someone the courage to leave, to speak up, to start over, then I did something good with all this pain. My ex. Last I heard, he was trying to patch things up with the Vegas bride. She left him. Smart girl. He tried to downplay the scandal, called it a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But reputations don't recover from viral humiliation that easily. And mine's just getting started. Because this story, it's not the end. It's just the beginning of mine. Family story. My husband. The chaos eventually quieted down. The article drifted into internet history. My ex stopped calling. The public lost interest and moved on to the next scandal. But I didn't forget. Because long after the internet moved on, I was still living in the aftermath. I looked around at the life I'd built, the house we once called ours, now just mine. Half-empty closet, quiet dinner table, and an echo in the hallway where laughter used to live. You'd think I'd feel sad. I did. At first. But sadness slowly gave way to something else. Freedom. I started waking up earlier. Not because I had to make his coffee or iron his shirts, but because I wanted to. I began walking every morning before work, listening to podcasts about resilience, self-worth, and healing. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd buried, trying to maintain the image of a perfect wife. Turns out, I was never meant to be perfect. Just honest. And I had been lying to myself for too long, in pretending I didn't see the signs, ignoring the emotional distance, rationalizing the gut feelings that told me something was wrong. But not anymore. One afternoon, while cleaning out the garage, I found an old box of my college artwork. Paintings, sketchbooks, even a few charcoal portraits. It hit me hard. I used to be creative. I used to be someone with passions outside of my relationship. That night, I dug out my easel, bought fresh paint, and started again. At first it felt awkward. My hands were rusty, my ideas messy. But the process itself was healing. Something about pouring your emotions onto canvas makes the pain make sense. My paintings started out dark, bleeding reds, angry blacks. But over time, the colors lightened, hints of blue, bright gold. I didn't realize what I was doing until I looked at the finished canvas weeks later. I was painting my way out of grief. Eventually, I started sharing my work on social media, not to go viral, but to connect. My small account grew faster than I expected. Women started messaging me again, not just about the scandal, but about the art, about healing, about starting over. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. So I launched a blog. I called it The Second Self, a space for women rebuilding after betrayal. It wasn't just my story. It became a home for our stories. Divorce, infidelity, gaslighting, recovery, resilience. The blog took off. People shared it. Some even asked if I'd consider hosting workshops or doing a podcast. The idea scared me at first. I wasn't a public speaker. I wasn't an influencer. I was just a woman trying to breathe after the storm. But maybe that's exactly who people needed to hear from. I started small. A free Zoom workshop called How to Begin Again. 10 women showed up. Then 20. Then over 100 signed up for the next one. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding, reclaiming, thriving. Meanwhile, my ex sent one final letter through his lawyer. A friendly suggestion to stop defaming his character online or in media. I laughed out loud when I read it. You don't get to betray your wife and control the narrative. Besides, I wasn't defaming anyone. I was just telling the truth. I wrote back a simple reply, through my lawyer. If he wants privacy, he should have respected the marriage vows he made in public twice. That was the last I heard from him. Around that time, something else happened that surprised me. I started dating. Nothing serious. I wasn't ready to jump into another commitment, but one of the women from my art class invited me to a gallery opening, and there I met someone. Not a whirlwind romance, no dramatic sparks, just kind conversation, gentle interest. A man who asked questions and listened to the answers. I told him my story up front. No shame, no sugarcoating. He blinked and said, "That must have been incredibly painful, but also incredibly brave." And for once, I didn't cry when telling the story. I smiled. That's when I realized it no longer hurt to talk about it. It no longer felt like a scar I needed to hide. It had become a part of me, but not the defining part. I was more than what he did to me. I was more than a betrayal or a headline. I was whole, all on my own. One day, a message came to my inbox that stopped me cold. It was from her, the Vegas woman. "I've been following your blog. I just wanted to say thank you. I made a mistake, a big one, but watching you take your pain and turn it into power helped me walk away from someone who never deserved either of us." I stared at her words for a long time. I didn't respond, but I smiled, and in a way I never expected I forgave her. Not because she asked, but because I didn't need to carry that bitterness anymore. I used to think forgiveness was for them, the ones who hurt us. But now I know it's for us, the ones who refuse to be defined by that hurt. Now, I spend my mornings painting, my afternoons writing, and my evenings helping other women find their voices. The blog has grown into a small nonprofit. We've hosted in-person retreats. We've published a book of healing essays. We've built something real from the ashes of something fake. I still get asked sometimes if I'd go back, if I'd undo the marriage, erase the pain, delete the Vegas nightmare. The answer is no. Because without that betrayal, I might still be asleep in my own life. Sometimes you lose everything you thought you needed and find the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Family story. My husband. I never expected to fall in love again. Not after what happened. Not after the lies, the betrayal, the double life I never saw coming. I thought I'd sworn off relationships for good. I was content with my art, my community, my healing. For the first time in years, I didn't need anyone to feel complete. And that's exactly when someone walked in. His name was Marcus. I met him at a charity fundraiser I'd been invited to speak at a women's empowerment event. I was nervous standing on stage telling my story to a room of strangers, but when I scanned the crowd, I saw him listening. Really listening. No phone. No side chatter. Just focused attention. After my speech, he came up to me and said, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but that was the most honest 20 minutes I've heard in a long time." I smiled politely. "Thanks. Honesty's about all I've got left." He laughed, and something about it felt warm, easy. We ended up talking for over an hour. tucked in a quiet corner of the venue. He asked thoughtful questions, not the invasive kind, just curious, grounded, respectful. He wasn't intimidated by my story. He wasn't trying to fix me. He was just there. And so it began. We took it slow. Coffee first, then a walk through a weekend art market. He asked to see some of my work, and instead of nodding and saying nice like most people, he actually pointed out small details. "This one feels like freedom," he said about one of my paintings. No one had ever described it that way before. It wasn't passion that caught me off guard. It was peace. With Marcus, there were no mind games, no sudden disappearances, no gut-clenching anxiety about where he was or who he was texting. It was stable, predictable, beautifully boring in the best way. But even then, I struggled. One night over dinner, he asked me why I always paused before answering personal questions. I hesitated again, and he smiled knowingly. "I'm not asking to push," he said gently. "I just want to know the real you, not the version you think I want." That sentence cracked something open in me. I told him the truth. I still flinch when my phone buzzes. I still don't trust my own instincts sometimes. I keep waiting for a catch. For you to suddenly be someone else. He didn't get defensive. He didn't try to convince me otherwise. He just said, "Then I'll stay the same. Every day. Until you believe I won't disappear." That was the moment I realized love doesn't fix you. But the right one doesn't break you further. And little by little, I started to believe again. I didn't give up my independence. My life wasn't suddenly about him. I still painted, still ran the second self, still mentored women healing from betrayal. Marcus never made me feel like I had to shrink to be in a relationship. If anything, he encouraged me to grow. One day, I invited him to a group retreat I was hosting in the mountains, a weekend for women with yoga journaling and art therapy. I told him he didn't need to come. "It's mostly women sharing their deepest pain," I warned, but he said sounds like an honor to be allowed into that space. He came helped set up chairs, quietly passed out notebooks. During one of the sessions, a woman broke down crying while telling her story. Marcus didn't speak, didn't try to comfort with cliches. He just offered her a tissue and sat beside her in silence. Later, she told me, "That man has presence. You don't find that often." She was right. It wasn't long before the divorce was finalized. My ex didn't even show up to the last hearing, just sent his lawyer. No apology. No final plea. Just a quiet ending to a marriage built on a foundation of lies. As I left the courthouse, I didn't cry. I smiled. It wasn't sadness. It was relief. Closure. Outside, Marcus was waiting with a coffee in one hand and a sunflower in the other. "You're officially free," he said with a grin. "How does it feel?" "It feels like I'm finally mine again," I replied. We didn't rush anything after that. No proposals. No talk of moving in. We both agreed this love didn't need a timeline. It just needed truth. Months passed. Seasons changed. And with each day, I found myself letting go of the old life. Not out of bitterness, but because it simply didn't fit me anymore. I used to believe that marriage was the end goal. that happily ever after came wrapped in a white dress and a shared mortgage. But now, I know the truth. Happiness doesn't live in who you're with. It lives in who you become after everything falls apart and you still rise. So, no, I didn't win back my husband. I didn't get revenge or closure in the way Hollywood scripts it. I got something better. I got myself, my voice, my power. And in the end, I found a kind of love I never thought existed. One that didn't demand my silence, my compromise, or my pain. It just asked me to show up. As I am, whole, healing, human. And that's exactly what I did. Family story. My husband. It had been nearly a year since the court finalized our divorce. Life had taken on a quiet rhythm, the kind that hums with steady peace. Mornings filled with art emails from readers and coffee with Marcus. Evenings spent walking in the park listening to music that once made me cry, but now just made me feel alive. I wasn't waiting for closure anymore, until it showed up anyway. One afternoon I checked the mailbox and saw it a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside a single handwritten letter. It was from him. I saw an article about you recently. You looked different, stronger. I guess I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. I know it's too late. But I want you to know, I'm sorry I sat with those words for a long time. Not because I was moved, but because I wasn't. There was a time when I would have read that letter 100 times, searching for meaning, for some proof that I mattered. But now, I didn't need it. His apology was a whisper in a room I'd already walked out of. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into a drawer I rarely opened. Not because I wanted to hold on to it, but because it no longer held power over me. Some ghosts don't need to be exorcised, they just need to be ignored. That night, I sat across from Marcus telling him about the letter. He didn't flinch. He just said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. I feel like I finally know who I am, without that story attached to me, I replied. Because that's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't define you unless you let it. And I'd already written a new story. A story of resilience, of finding my voice, of turning pain into power and betrayal into beauty. Now when I speak to women going through similar storms, I don't tell them to move on or stay strong. I tell them the truth. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel invincible. Other days you'll cry in the cereal aisle at the grocery store. Both are okay. Just don't stop walking. And if you're still in the middle of your story, if you're reading this or watching this, wondering if you'll ever feel whole, again, let me tell you something you will. Not all at once. Not because someone else saves you, but because you finally decide that you are worth saving. So know my story didn't end with a happily ever after in the traditional sense, but it ended with me standing in the sunlight, unafraid, finally free. And that's more than enough. If this story moved you, if you've ever been hurt, betrayed, or found strength in starting over, please, subscribe, and share this video. This is Family Story, My Husband, where we turn pain into power, and every ending is the beginning of something stronger. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that might just change your perspective or help you heal. You are not alone. Your voice matters, and your story is just getting started.